Hi, my name is Amit, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use Quiver's leaderboard service for Godot. With Quiver leaderboards, it's easy to add global leaderboards to your game, which is a great way to keep players coming back. I like to think of leaderboards as the easiest way to add multiplayer to your game. And if you're not familiar with Quiver, we're building tutorials and services for Godot to help you get from idea to launch and beyond. In this tutorial, we're going to modify our game Outpost Assault, a tower defense game, and add leaderboards to it. If you want to try this yourself, you can use the link below to download the open source code for Outpost Assault. And by the way, if you want to learn how to build a tower defense game like this, check out our premium tower defense course for Godot in the link below. I also want to note that at the time of creating this tutorial, Quiver Leaderboards is still in beta, so expect a lot more features and functionality in the future. The basics will still apply, but the UI and options might not be exactly the same, and you should see a lot more options to customize the leaderboards exactly how you want. So Quiver Leaderboards has two parts, the back end, meaning the server where we store the scores, and the front end, the UI where we display the scores, and we're going to set up both of these things. Let's start with the back end first. You'll first need to set up an account on quiver.dev if you haven't already. Then you can go to the leaderboards page, which you can find under services, and clicking on leaderboards for Godot. And you can either create a new project or use an existing project you have. I'm going to create a new project and call it Outpost Assault. So one cool feature with Quiver Leaderboards is that we give you the ability to set up multiple leaderboards for your game. So you can have a leaderboard per level or per character class or anything else that suits your game. But for Outpost Assault, we're just going to use a single high scores leaderboard. Next, we're going to set up our new leaderboard. We're going to call it high scores. I'm going to type that in here. But keep in mind, this is just an internal name to help you distinguish your leaderboards. We won't show this name to the player. We have a bunch of different options for how the leaderboard behaves. First, we have our update strategy, which means how we'll want to handle when a player sends any scores beyond their first score. So the default is all scores, which means we'll store an unlimited number of scores for each player. This is probably the most common option. You can also just choose to record the best score, where the leaderboard will only record the player's best score and all the other scores are overwritten. Next, we have the latest score, where the leaderboard will store each player's most recent score, ignoring how high or low the score is. Finally, we have the cumulative score, where we'll keep a running total of each player's posted score. Keep in mind that the all scores option is the only option where we'll have multiple scores for each player. For all the other options, we'll just store one score for each player. Also note that you can only set the update option when you create the leaderboard, and you can't change it later. But you can always create a testing leaderboard when your game is in development and use a new one for production. Finally, the last option here, the sorting method, will dictate if higher scores are better, which is the default, or if you want to have lower scores be better. So that would be the case for, say, like a racing games, time trials, or a golf game, or anything like that. And again, this can't be changed later either. All right, let's go ahead and create this leaderboard. We're going to stick with the all scores strategy for now. Now you can see we have a few tokens and IDs here that we're going to use in a little bit, but for now, we're all done with the back end of our leaderboards. So let's handle the front end. Let's pop on over to our Godot client. And the first thing we need to do is set up the two plugins that we'll need to get this working. We can grab the plugins either from Github or the Godot Asset Library, whichever works for you. So I've left some links down below if you need it, but I'm going to go ahead and install the first plugin, which is the player accounts plugin, and I'm going to use the asset library. So I'm going to click on this asset library, and I'm just going to search for Quiver, and you can see we have our player accounts here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, download it, and install, and it'll install into the add-ons directory. Okay, we're all set with that. So this plugin is a dependency for the Leaderboards plugin. So let's go ahead and install the Leaderboards plugin next. So I'll click on the Leaderboards plugin, download, install. Okay. Go ahead and close this output window. Now we'll want to configure our plugins. So we're going to go to project settings. We want to go over to plugins, and we'll want to enable the leaderboards and the player accounts plugins. So I'll enable both of these. I'm going to go ahead and close this window and reopen it. And when we do that and we pop on over to the general tab, if we scroll all the way down, we should see a new Quiver section in our project settings, which we do. If you don't see this, Godot can be a little bit finicky with plugins. You might have to disable and re-enable the plugin. So go ahead and do that if you don't see this Quiver section in your settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click this general, and you'll see we'll need to set an auth token here. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and pop back over to the Quiver website. You can see we have this auth token here. I'm going to select this, copy it, and I am going to paste it right in here and close this. So now we've set up our plugins. Now, the first thing we have to do is actually add a scoring system to this game because our Outpost Assault game doesn't have a scoring system. And even if you're not familiar with the code base, it shouldn't be too hard to follow along since the layout of this project makes adding scoring pretty easy. So first I'm going to go open up global.gd. I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to add a new variable called score. We'll infer a type of integer and we'll just set the score to 0. Next, I'm going to open up map.gd. If we go to the onEnemyDied function, so this is the signal that's called every time an enemy dies. This will be the perfect place to increment our score. And what I'm just going to do is copy and paste this money line here where we're incrementing the money and do the same with the score. And we're going to use this kill reward, which is set for each enemy, and the more difficult the enemy, the higher the kill reward. This works perfectly for our score. And just because we're testing this out anyway, this is fine. We could always change this later. And so we're incrementing our score every time an enemy dies. So now we'll also want to post the score to the server when the game ends. So to do so, let's go down to the game over function down here. And we're just going to add a single line. So we're going to call await because this is going to be an HTTP request, and we're going to want this to, we're going to wait and see if this finishes if we do anything afterwards. And we're going to call our leaderboards autoload, which is automatically enabled in your project when you enable the leaderboards plugin. And I'm going to call post guest score. The first parameter of this will be leaderboard ID. And if you have any questions about the parameters for this function, I'll provide links in the documentation in the video description. So take a look at that, but I'll just run through this most common call that we're going to do, which is posting a score. And to get that leaderboard ID, I'm going to pop back over here and you can see we have this leaderboard ID. And again, this helps us distinguish between the different leaderboards we may have for a given project. So I'm going to use this unique ID, come back here and paste that in. Next, we'll want to post the actual score, which is in our global autoload here. So I'll do global.score. And the third parameter is an optional nickname you can give to this player. Again, these are guest players, so they can have arbitrary nicknames. So the nickname is publicly visible, so it's up to you how you want to handle this. You can let the player pick their own name, but then you have to make sure you screen for profanity and things like that. Another nice option is just to create a randomly generated name for the user. And finally, you can also just pass an empty string and choose not to show nicknames at all in the UI. It's all up to you, however you want to handle it. For this case, just because we're just playing around with this, we're just going to put in test player. And that's what will show up in the leaderboard. And this post guest score, what it's going to do behind the scenes is actually create a guest account for the current player. Once it's created that account, it's going to reuse that account for all subsequent score postings. And this guest account only lives on the player's device. If they move to a new device, it'll create a new account. In the future, Quiver will support multiple account types so they can migrate between devices. So whether that's using emails and passwords or Steam accounts or Apple IDs, anything like that, we'll support that in the future. But for now, we support just creating guest accounts. And this all happens transparently behind the scenes. Okay, now we're all set for posting scores. I'm going to go ahead and run the game, play it a little bit, and reach the game over state. I'm going to just speed ahead here, and I'll be back once we've hit the game over state. All right, we've hit the game over. Now, we can't check leaderboards in the game because we haven't set up the in-game UI for the leaderboards yet, but we can check on the website. So I'm just going to exit out of here. And if we pop on over to our site and look up the scores, we should see our score posted. And yes, we can see we scored 2,000 points, and this was posted by our test player. So that's awesome. We got that working. Note that you can use this UI when your game goes live to manage scores, filter out fake scores, and just generally keep tabs on what's happening on your leaderboard. So this will be handy for later. Okay, now for the last step, let's create our leaderboards UI. For the UI, you have two options. You can either use our out-of-the-box UI or use the API and create your own UI. Actually, there's even a third option where you can use our UI as a boilerplate and then customize that. Whatever works for you. In this tutorial, we'll use the default UI. So let's go back to our project and let's open up our main menu scene. So what we're going to do is select our root main menu node and instantiate a child scene. And we're going to select this leaderboard UI that comes from our leaderboards plugin. And you can see we have the leaderboard UI here. Now, when I select this leaderboard UI node, you'll see that there's a couple properties on the side. First, and this is required, is that we need the leaderboard ID, which we can get from our website, because this is going to specify which leaderboard we're going to pull our scores from. So let's pop back over to our website, go to settings, and grab this leaderboard ID, copy that, and we'll paste that right in here. Next, you can see a couple other properties as well. So next, we need to specify which scores to show. We can show all scores, which is the default, and this will pull all the scores from our leaderboard, starting with the best score. We can also just show the current player's scores. So if your leaderboard is set up to store all scores, then this will contain multiple scores for the current player. If you're using anything else, it'll just be a single score associated with that player. Finally, you can select the nearby option, and that will show all the scores above and below the player's score. The next two options control the paging of the scores. So we have the score offset, which controls where in the leaderboard to start pulling scores from, with 0 being the top score. The next property is the score limit, and that controls how many scores we're pulling at a time, which basically means how many scores are on a page, which defaults to 10 and can have a max of up to 50 per page. The next two properties only matter if you choose the nearby score filter option. The nearby count controls how many scores to display above and below the player's score. The nearby anchor selects whether to use the player's best score to display scores around or their more recent score. Again, this anchor option only matters if you're using the all scores leaderboard strategy and the player has multiple scores. In all other cases, the player only has one score, so this option doesn't have any effect. This all gets a little confusing, so feel free to drop a comment if you need some clarification. Finally, we can choose the highlight color of the player's score, which by default is just the screen. For all other UI elements regarding color and style in the leaderboard UI, it'll all be inherited from the project's default UI theme. If you haven't customized this for your project, it'll be just the Godot theme. But for this game, Outpost Assault, we actually created our own UI theme, which we can show right here in this UI theme file. And you can see this is the inherited theme that we'll use in our leaderboards because this matches our game. If you're not familiar with UI themes, you can check out the Godot docs, which I'll link below, or you can look at the Outpost Assault course, which will teach you how to use Godot's theming features. And so before we move on, let's add one more thing to our leaderboards UI, and that's just a close button. So I'm going to go ahead and select this leaderboard UI, add a button, we'll call it close, and then we're ready to hide this leaderboard UI because it'll be hidden by default until we're ready to show it. So I'm going to just hit this I here, and we'll hide the leaderboard UI. Next, let's create a button to show the high scores. So I'm just going to take this how to play button, duplicate it, drag it up here. I'm going to call this high scores. And I'll change the text to high scores in all caps. I'm going to pull this signal here, and I'm actually going to disconnect this because this is what we copied from how to play. I'm going to disconnect this, create a new signal handler. And this is going to be very simple. We're just going to take the leaderboard UI and we're going to show it if we select the high scores button. And similarly, let's go ahead and take our close button and connect a signal handler here. And I'm just going to copy and paste this. And we're just going to hide this. Okay, now if we run the game. So if we run our game now, we should be able to check our high scores, which we only have one right now. So we hit the high scores button. Yes, we could see our test player, score of 2000, and we could see we have the fonts and style that's inherited from our our theme here. Oh, and I forgot to position this close button, but you can just position this in your game and that will close the high scores button. And you can see how we can post scores to our leaderboards and show them here or anywhere else in your game, really. And that's it. Feel free to add leaderboards to your prototypes, game jam games, your real games, anything else. It's a super compelling feature and hopefully you find it takes just a little bit of work to add. If you have any questions or suggestions, send us an email, drop into our Discord, or leave a comment. There are links below to get in touch with us. Thanks for watching.